Ghost Adventures has filmed over 300 episodes across 15 years of paranormal investigation. Zach Bagans and his crew have locked themselves inside the world's most haunted prisons, asylums, hospitals, and private residences. They've been scratched, pushed, possessed, and terrorized by entities that most people don't believe exist. They've investigated locations where people died violently, where satanic rituals were performed, where children were abused and murdered. Through all of it, through every terrifying moment captured on camera, production never stopped. Until now, something happened during a recent investigation that forced the entire production to shut down mid-season. A crew member was hospitalized. Zach made emergency calls to demonologists. Legal teams got involved. Insurance companies threatened to pull all coverage, which would have ended the show permanently. This wasn't just another scary moment caught on camera for ratings and dramatic effect. This was a genuine safety crisis that threatened everyone involved with the production. After 15 years of pushing boundaries and provoking spirits in the darkest locations on Earth, something finally pushed back hard enough to stop them. What happened in that location was so severe, so genuinely dangerous that continuing the season became absolutely impossible. The crew member who was at the center of this incident has never spoken publicly about what he experienced, and according to sources close to the production, he never will. Some experiences change you permanently. Some things, once seen or felt, are better left in darkness. This is the story of the investigation that shut down Ghost Adventures. The location was a private residence in the Midwest that had been flagged by multiple paranormal research teams as extremely dangerous. This wasn't a historical building with tragic past events. This was a modern family home where something genuinely evil had taken up residence. 3 different families had lived in the house over a span of just 5 years. All 3 families fled, leaving behind furniture and possessions because staying another night wasn't worth the psychological trauma. Previous paranormal investigation teams had entered the property. Some refused to return. Others reported experiences so disturbing they stopped investigating the paranormal entirely. Local Catholic clergy had been called to the home multiple times. Exorcism rituals were attempted. They failed. The activity escalated rather than diminished. Police reports documented dozens of calls from various residents over the years. Officers responding to disturbance calls reported experiencing equipment failures, unexplained sounds, and feelings of overwhelming dread. One officer filed an official report describing seeing a shadow figure move through a wall. The current homeowners contacted Ghost Adventures as a last resort. They described being physically attacked in their sleep, objects being thrown with violent force, voices making specific threats against family members, their children showing signs of possible possession, speaking in languages they'd never learned. When Zach and the production team reviewed the homeowners' documentation, they initially approached with standard protocols and confidence. They'd investigated worse locations before, or so they thought. The investigation began on a Friday evening in late summer. Full production crew on location. Approximately 12 people including Zach, Aaron Goodwin, Billy Tolley, and Jay Wasley. The plan was a complete overnight lockdown investigation with the entire crew remaining inside until dawn. Within the first 30 minutes, problems began. Cameras malfunctioned despite fresh batteries and full charges. Digital recorders picked up voices immediately, too many to document properly. Temperature drops occurred in different rooms simultaneously despite it being summer with no air conditioning running. Multiple crew members reported feeling touched or pushed by invisible forces. Zach began experiencing symptoms he'd felt before during demonic investigations. Sudden violent nausea, pressure on his chest making breathing difficult, overwhelming rage that seemed to come from outside himself. Aaron Goodwin reported being pushed hard enough to stumble while standing in an empty hallway, captured clearly on camera. Billy Tolley's equipment was registering electromagnetic readings that exceeded anything he'd measured in 15 years of investigations. Then the situation escalated beyond anything they'd experienced before. Around 11 p.m., approximately 3 hours into the investigation, one of the camera operators suddenly collapsed in the upstairs master bedroom. Not fainting or losing balance, but a complete physical collapse, as if every muscle had stopped functioning simultaneously. He was conscious but unable to move any part of his body. His eyes were open and moving, showing clear distress and terror, but he couldn't speak or call for help. The crew members nearest to him immediately called for assistance. Zach and others rushed to his position. He remained on the floor floor, completely paralyzed, but clearly conscious and aware. His eyes were moving frantically, trying to communicate something. Then his expression changed entirely. His face contorted in a way that several crew members later described as inhuman. When he finally spoke, the voice that came out wasn't his own. It was deeper, older, and it knew things about crew members' personal lives that the camera operator had no way of knowing. That moment, captured on multiple cameras from different angles, was when everyone realized this investigation had crossed a line. Production was immediately halted. Emergency services were called despite the remote location. The camera operator, who we'll call David to protect his identity, was transported by ambulance to the nearest hospital, approximately 40 minutes away. Zach and several crew members followed in separate vehicles. At the hospital, medical staff ran comprehensive tests, CT scans, MRI, blood work, neurological examinations. Every test came back completely normal. There was no physical cause for his collapse or the paralysis he'd experienced, but David was reporting ongoing symptoms that had nothing to do with physical injury. He described feeling something inside him that wasn't part of himself. He experienced episodes where he felt his consciousness being pushed aside by another presence. Hospital staff initially treated it as a psychiatric emergency, but David's behavior was escalating in ways that medical explanations couldn't address. He would speak in voices that weren't his own, discussing things he couldn't possibly know. He demonstrated knowledge of hospital staff members' private lives, including details about their families and past traumas that were never disclosed to him. His physical strength became abnormal. It took multiple security personnel to restrain him during episodes. The attending physician, who'd worked in emergency medicine for over 20 years, privately told Zach that he'd never encountered anything like this. Medical science had no framework for what was happening. At that point, hospital administration made an unprecedented decision. They requested spiritual intervention, acknowledging that this was beyond the scope of conventional medicine. All cameras had been rolling during the incident at the house. The footage captured everything from multiple angles with synchronized timestamps. What the cameras showed was more disturbing than anyone watching in real time had fully comprehended. In the moments before David collapsed, multiple cameras captured him turning suddenly toward a specific corner of the room. His expression changed from concentration on his filming duties to what can only be described as abject terror. His body language shifted entirely. Then the collapse, captured from 3 different camera positions simultaneously. But the truly disturbing elements appeared when the footage was reviewed carefully. Enhanced audio analysis revealed a voice that wasn't David's speaking just before he fell. Thermal imaging cameras showed a heat signature near his position that had no physical source. Electromagnetic field meters registered a massive spike at the exact moment of collapse, going from baseline readings to off-the-scale measurements instantaneously. Other cameras positioned throughout the house captured what appeared to be a shadow figure in the background, present in multiple rooms simultaneously, which is physically impossible. This footage was unlike anything the show had ever captured. Multiple recording devices using different technologies, all confirming the same impossible event from different perspectives. There was no possibility of equipment malfunction because different systems showed corresponding anomalies. There was no natural explanation that could account for all the documented phenomena occurring simultaneously. The production team faced an immediate decision. Could this footage be aired on television? The legal department raised concerns. Showing what appeared to be genuine demonic possession of a crew member raised ethical questions about exploitation and consent. Could David, in his current state, consent to his trauma being broadcast? Did the network have liability if viewers were disturbed by content that was genuinely supernatural rather than entertainment? There were concerns that airing footage of apparent possession could inspire copycat incidents or attract dangerous attention to the show. After extensive legal review and consultation with religious experts who viewed the footage, the decision was made. The footage would not air in its complete form. Brief segments might be shown with heavy editing, but the full sequence would remain in archive. To this day, only a handful of people have seen the complete footage, and according to those who have viewed it, that's for the best. Zach Bagans has built his entire career on pushing boundaries and confronting the paranormal without hesitation. He's provoked spirits, challenged demons, and investigated locations that other teams refused to enter. Throughout 15 seasons of ghost adventures, through hundreds of investigations, he'd never shut down production early, never walked away from a location because it was too dangerous. His reputation was built on fearlessness and commitment to documenting the truth, regardless of personal cost. But David's collapse and possession changed something fundamental. For the first time in his career, Zach made the call to completely halt production. From the hospital, he contacted Travel Channel executives. He called demonologists he'd worked with previously. He consulted with religious authorities, and he made the decision. The investigation was over. The remaining scheduled locations for the season would be postponed indefinitely. The crew would not return to that house under any circumstances. Some people questioned his decision, including network executives who'd invested heavily in the season. The financial implications were severe. Locations had been scouted, contracts signed, production scheduled months in advance. Shutting down mid-season meant losing hundreds of thousands of dollars and potentially damaging relationships with the network. But Zach stood firm. His reasoning was simple. Crew safety mattered more than content, more than ratings, more than his reputation for never backing down. He'd seen something in that house and in David's possession that convinced him they'd encountered something genuinely evil, something beyond his ability to control or protect his crew from. Ghost Adventures, like all television productions, operates under comprehensive insurance coverage. That insurance protects against crew injuries, equipment damage, and liability for investigating dangerous locations. The insurance company's risk management team reviewed footage of the incident. They consulted with medical experts, safety professionals, and, surprisingly, paranormal researchers. Their concern was simple. Did the production team take adequate precautions? Were proper safety protocols followed? Could this incident have been prevented? If they determined that Ghost Adventures had violated safety standards or deliberately put crew members at risk, they could pull coverage. Without insurance, filming would be legally impossible. The entire show would end, not just the current season. Insurance investigators interviewed every crew member present during the incident. They reviewed all footage, not just from the night of David's collapse, but from previous episodes investigating demonic locations. They were building a case about whether the show had established a pattern of reckless behavior. Some crew members, shaken by what happened to David, were considering leaving the show entirely. Others refused to return to the house even to retrieve equipment that had been left behind. Union representatives got involved, raising questions about workplace safety and paranormal investigation. The situation had evolved from a single terrifying incident into a full-scale production crisis. Every aspect of Ghost Adventures was being scrutinized, questioned, potentially dismantled by forces that Zach couldn't confront with provocation or bravery. While the business crisis unfolded, David remained hospitalized and his condition was deteriorating rather than improving. The presence inside him was becoming stronger, more dominant. Hospital staff had never dealt with anything like this. Medical interventions were ineffective because there was nothing medically wrong. This required spiritual intervention of a type that modern hospitals aren't equipped to provide. A Catholic priest was brought to the hospital after consultation with the diocese. He performed a preliminary assessment and confirmed what everyone had begun to suspect. David was suffering from genuine demonic possession, not psychological trauma, not mental illness, but actual spiritual oppression by an inhuman entity. The decision was made to perform a full exorcism rite. This wasn't the dramatic Hollywood version. It was a serious religious ritual. Multiple sessions were required over several days. During these sessions, David displayed impossible physical strength, speaking in languages he'd never studied, revealing information he couldn't have known through natural means. The entity identified itself and spoke of things that terrified even the experienced priest performing the ritual. Crew members who visited David during this period described his voice changing completely, his face contorting in inhuman ways, his eyes showing something looking out that wasn't David at all. This was never filmed. The Catholic Church required privacy for the ritual. Zach honored that requirement despite his instinct to document everything. Some things are too sacred, too serious to be turned into content. Eventually, after multiple sessions and intervention by additional religious authorities, the exorcism was successful. David was freed from the possession, but he was permanently changed by the experience. He could remember some of what happened, fragments of the entity's thoughts and intentions. Those memories haunted him in ways that no therapy could address. He left Ghost Adventures after his recovery. He refuses to discuss the experience publicly. According to those close to him, he's requested that his identity never be revealed. He wants no connection to paranormal investigation ever again. That silence, that absolute refusal to capitalize on or even discuss what happened to him, speaks volumes. People who fake possession or exaggerate paranormal experiences want attention, want to tell their story. David wants only to forget. That more than anything else confirms that what happened to him was real and traumatic beyond description. An emergency production meeting was held involving Zach, senior producers, Travel Channel executives, insurance representatives, and legal advisors. The question on the table: what happens to Ghost Adventures? Arguments were made for continuing. The financial investment was substantial. Contractual obligations existed. existed. Other locations were prepared and waiting. Some argued this was an opportunity to document unprecedented phenomena. But the arguments for shutting down were stronger. Crew safety had to be paramount. Legal liability was too high if something similar happened again. Insurance coverage was at risk of being pulled entirely. The psychological trauma to the team was real and ongoing. Ethical questions about exploitation had no good answers. After hours of discussion, the decision was made. The season would be officially suspended. Scheduled locations would be postponed indefinitely. A full investigation of the incident would be conducted. New safety protocols would need to be developed and implemented before filming could resume. The public announcement was carefully worded to reveal nothing specific. Production pause for comprehensive safety review was the official statement. No mention of possession, exorcism, or the real reasons behind the shutdown. Fans immediately began speculating. Something serious had happened. Ghost Adventures, a show that had never stopped for anything, had been forced to stop. The theories ranged from accurate to absurd, but the truth remained hidden, locked away in classified footage, medical records, and the traumatic memories of people who'd signed non-disclosure agreements. Ghost Adventures eventually returned to filming after a several-month hiatus, but the show was fundamentally changed. New safety protocols were implemented that would have seemed paranoid before David's possession. Religious experts were placed on standby during all investigations. Enhanced medical support became standard. Location vetting became much stricter, with certain types of properties being automatically rejected. Crew members were offered psychological counseling and spiritual protection resources. Most significantly, Zach's approach to investigation changed. The bravado and provocation that had defined his style was tempered with caution. Demonic cases were handled with more preparation and backup. Some locations that would have been investigated previously were declined because the risk outweighed any potential evidence. What the public doesn't know, what was never disclosed despite intense fan speculation, the full details of David's possession remain sealed. Complete medical records are protected. The unedited footage from that night is locked in secure storage. David's identity has never been revealed publicly. The exact location of the house hasn't been disclosed to prevent copycat investigations. The entity's name and the specific things it revealed during the exorcism were never shared. Some information is too dangerous to release. Some knowledge invites attention from forces that shouldn't be provoked. Zach has spoken carefully about the incident in interviews. He's admitted it was the first time he questioned whether investigation was worth the risk to his crew. He's acknowledged new appreciation for the genuine danger of demonic cases. He's committed publicly to crew protection over content, and he's stated clearly that some locations shouldn't be investigated, something he would never have admitted before David's possession. The team has never returned to that house. The property remains occupied by the family who called them, still experiencing activity, still living with whatever evil resides there. They've learned to coexist with it because they have nowhere else to go. For 15 years, Ghost Adventures proved to millions of viewers that the paranormal was real, that spirits and entities exist beyond death. This incident proved something more disturbing. The paranormal isn't just real, it's genuinely dangerous. It can hurt you, it can change you, it can mark you permanently. And sometimes documentation isn't worth the cost of obtaining it. A crew member at the center of this incident, the man we've called David, has rebuilt his life far away from paranormal investigation and television production. He's never spoken publicly about what he experienced during those hours of possession. He's declined every interview request, turned down substantial financial offers from media outlets, refused to participate in documentaries about the incident. According to sources close to him, he's made peace with what happened in his own way. But he lives with the knowledge that something evil touched his soul, used his body, spoke through his voice. Some experiences are so profound, so violent, that silence is the only appropriate response. That silence, more than any testimony or interview could accomplish, confirms the reality of what happened. This is why Ghost Adventures shut down. This is the incident that proved some investigations have consequences that last forever.